Good morning. It is great to be in your beautiful country and beautiful city. Thank you very much for invitation. So that is my second time in Bilbao. The first time wasn't so successful. We drove with our car and it was just evening and sun was setting. And we didn't realize that you have so much hills and mountains and we couldn't see them from the map and we totally lost our ways. Now, yesterday, it was excellent that taxi had ordered to me and I get the hotel very easily. And now in this morning, I have great pleasure to walk through the park and see beautiful town. So indeed, thank you so much, and I'm so happy that I have opportunity to visit your country, which is also small in population. Like in Finland, we have only 5.5 million people, but we are very proud of education, and it's always nice to be in the situation and events where education is a focus. So before I start my lecture, I would like to know a little who are in the audience. I know that there are teachers, there are principals, there are administration people. So who of you are teaching children, kids under 10 years old? Teachers under 10 years old? Small children, right? Who are teachers who teach over 10 years old, teenagers? Some of you are there, yes, indeed. And who are teachers? Who are principals who take the leadership in schools? Also, you are there. And who are working just for administration of education in different kinds of posts. Yes, very, very important. Very important people you are, because you are creating the future in your country. People who are working in different posts in education are very important. The next generation is based very much on your work. And today we have opportunity to speak about professional development in changing conditions of the educational ecosystem. And as the minister just mentioned, there are a lot of changes in societies. And what happens in societies, in global world, that is also something what happens in microcosmos, in schools and classrooms. So I think that there are a huge amount of global issues. I just listed some of them in these slides. And I think that very many of these challenges are linked with equity issues, equal opportunities. I prefer to use equity, the term in English, that means that equal opportunities, but they are supported. And that means equity means that even though you have, in principle, equal opportunities, you not always have opportunity to really use them. It's needed some support from society and educational leadership. Many kinds of inequalities are still, even though a lot of people have access to education, there are many challenges based on socio-economic status, gender, ethnic and cultural background, also related to religion, language, geographical location. So these are everyday life in many societies. migration, refugees, and emergency crises also make a lot of challenges in schools, and who are teachers, they know that there are kids who really need a lot of support. But then there is also in many countries very serious issue, lack of teachers or incompetent teachers. So here I'm so happy to see that there are teachers who are in schools and you are serving education as a teacher or leaders. In many schools also there are infrastructure issues and how people can use new technology that is not neither self-evident in everywhere. But then comes the big issues, what should be in school curriculum. How schools and teachers respond to those needs, what changing work life, changing societal structures, changing technology are demanding. And we know that knowledge is updating very, very much and at high speed, but then there is also another new things, which is especially disinformation, fake news, and how there are also amount of different kind of media that deliver information that is not any scientific basis. It's something what is then confusing both parents, teachers, students. That is also something what school face today. And everybody knows social media issue, how much there are happy things, but there are also dark sides. Violations of privacy, cybersecurity problems, and hate and bullying in online. These are also part of everyday life in schools. And then I think that digitalization and new technology are all the time demanding new competencies from teachers, pushing them to the situation you have to learn all the time new things. So I think that is only one list. I think that this kind of list we can make, and there are a lot of changes. But what then? I have used the concept of educational ecosystem, and I want to take a little time for explaining what does that mean when we are speaking about ecosystem. So ecosystem means that there are different partners. There are a lot of partners, but then ecosystem means that they are interconnected. And if thinking in education, there are macro level, big issues at national level, curriculum system, who is responsible for curriculum development, evaluation system, how learning outcomes are measured and assessed, how teacher education is organized in the country, what is lifelong learning strategies. I think that just big issues which have huge influence on what is education in the country. And then there are more mid-level, with these implementers of these big decisions. Schools, school culture, how they are responding to those big issues, what are demanded by law or regulations, and then school leadership. In which way schools are working in such a way that those big changes can be implemented or achieved those aims that is in target and as goals. But then there is this micro level. There are individuals, individual teachers, their own history, their own attitudes, their own thinking ways. There are students with our own microcosmos, their hobbies, their parents, everything what is around a student's own life. So the problem is that how these different levels can be connected. And that is the problem in many, many countries, that they are so isolation. There are different kinds of aims at macro level. There are different kinds of attitudes in mid-level in schools, and then there are so many voices coming from micro level. The aim is that these could have high interaction, being along in reforms, having voices from the first beginning, and also have a lot of cooperation. The issue is how these can be connected when we are speaking about teachers' professional development. And that is something what I want to now little discuss about Finland, and in which way we have tried to solve these ecosystem issues. So when it was last century, 1970 around, big reforms happened in Finland education. We had a system where only elite get good education and others couldn't get. There were tuition fees, there are private schools, and there are the big problem that huge amount of people couldn't get the education that prepare them for new work. We were agriculture country, but we became industrial country, and skill demands were so big, we have to change a lot. And then there was a lot of debates. Not all people didn't like to reform education in our country, but then there was finally political decision that education must be accessible to every child, for every city, to every village, everywhere. And that was the big issue which changed education. Equity, equal opportunities is the leading principle. And that has been since then some kind of main priority. Even we have had different governments, different political coalitions, still that is something we see, that equity is the most important issue. It gives some umbrella how to things should be reformed. That part of that decision was public funding, so that most education is free of charge. People don't need to think how much they allocate education for their kids. It must be available. And we changed also evaluation systems in such a way that it's not anymore putting order or ranking students or teachers or dropping out students during their school time, but use assessments for support. That students need support in time when they have difficulties. And that made change also in teachers' attitude. Because we started to speak that everyone must learn throughout their lives. They need skills, what is needed for their future life, not only passing some examination. So that was the change. And I have to say that not many teachers and not all teachers didn't agree with that, because it changed also their profession. Earlier they could do with some kind of grouped elite group and others, and there wasn't so much needed to think about how students learn. Now they became responsible that everyone must get certain standards in education for getting lifelong learning skills. So that was then big cultural change. And there is now the school law 1998 that is based on those reforms what we made earlier, and then that means that purpose is education is to support pupils' growth into humanity and ethically responsible members of society, and provide them with the knowledge and skills needed in life. You can see that it's not anymore that passing some examination. Knowledge and skills that is needed in life. It's many ways also practical issues. Teachers was also a little hesitant. What does that mean? That how we have to take care of students in very practical issues also to help them in their life. So education shall further to be secure adequate equity in education throughout the country. So equity means that education is important and the whole school system must work for that, which means that teachers have worked very much for that. We made change. Earlier structure was very much tracked. You go to after examination to one kind of school, but then you can't get access to higher education. So I don't like to go through this very detailed, only what I want to show to you, that now when there is this primary and lower secondary level and primary, after then there is a lot of opportunities because there are different roads to more academic or more vocational area, but all these roads lead to higher education. There are never dead ends that you couldn't continue your education. And that is very important point, that students have different kind of styles and pace and difficulties and opportunities in their life. They fail also, but they need also opportunity to continue even they fail. So that is the way that we try to organize our education, that there are flexible roads and there are opportunity to go forward in education. Which means also totally different kind of role and responsibility for teachers, because teachers have to take care that students can continue. They have some kind of understanding how individual student can get their own path in education for the future. So that means that there are important changes. We didn't anymore track the students to different lower intermediate groups. They are very much mixed ability groups, and support is giving to weak students. And when we moved this, it was first very centralized, that our Ministry of Education follow very much how teachers and schools were implementing those major principles. But then, because we had also changed our teacher training, and we have massive teacher in-service training in this time when reforms were conducted, then we hire all teachers' basic degree as master level. There must be bachelor and master level 5-year education for all, for primary and secondary level. Which means that teachers get high-level professional status. But professional status is not only based on university studies. There must be also some other things. And when we think about what is professional status, usually there are three very important issues. First is high-level education and training, that there is that training. Second is ethical code, that there is high value based on this profession. If you think about medical doctor, there must be high education, then there must be also ethical code, what is doctor's work. And then thirdly, there must be autonomy. Professional status means that this profession has autonomy. They must develop that profession from inside. But what does it mean to develop profession from inside with their own understanding and opinions? Based on this high education and based on ethical code, autonomy means high responsibilities. Commitment of those big values which are in that profession, in education, for example, equity issues, teachers' role to support students, teachers' role to be change agent in those kind of reforms what society needs, which is continuous. So that means that teachers' professional role changed also in Finland very much. And that change also means that now we are at the moment very decentralized educational system, which means that also different stakeholders, parents, organizations, teacher organizations, working life organizations are invited and along when something will be reformed. And it's not only in some minister or Ministry of Education, it's more interactive process. And why that is then interactive? It is that getting those micro, mid and macro level educational part together. So in that process also, as I mentioned, our evaluation system changed. It's not any more standardized testing, it's more sample-based information gathering, and it is something which is used for development. We speak about improvement-led evaluation. It is totally different than earlier, and in many other countries where everything is assessed to put in rank. So that is then something what we did, and the aim was that potential of every individual should be maximized, and it is that all citizens will have equal opportunities. When I told and tell about this, I have to admit also that that is not only smooth process, because society is changing all the time. Today we have a lot of debate how we really can support different learners. Do they get support in time in different parts of Finland? Also refugees and immigrants. What is their language capacity? How we support them? Is it enough support for them? We are very worried about this issue. There is real big challenges, but without cooperation with these different levels, macro and mid-level, it's almost impossible to change things and make them better. And education debates and discussion is very important. So I would like to say a couple of words of the systems that are centralized and decentralized. As I mentioned, we were first very centralized, were very detailed national curriculum, and there was very much also pre-selected materials, what the schools must use, and national assessment and tests, and then also national in-service training. And then, when we moved towards decentralized system, it was a process. It didn't happen in 1 year. It was gradually, because teaching profession also changed because of the high-level teacher education, and teachers' own attitude also changed. Big attitudinal change was that who is responsible for curriculum we are using. In earlier times, it came directly from Ministry of Education. But then Ministry of Education changed the system, and they say that we give only frames. Curriculum frames, we speak about core curriculum. It gives only value-based and very important principles. But schools, you are responsible for your own curriculum, school-based curriculum. And I can remember those years when teachers were very much against. Why we have to make our own curriculum? It's much more work than what we earlier had. We had earlier clear curriculum and clear plan what to teach. Now we have to make our own curriculum. Oh my goodness. And that happened. And schools started, they were asked to start. Just think about what are the major values in your school. What kind of values you can be committed, but certainly there were under the big value spectrum in education, especially equity issues. In which way you promote these values. And then make plans. What kind that means, what kind teaching methods you will use, what kind assessment methods you will use, and yes, that is something you have to discuss in your own school. And that happens, that teacher union was first against that. Then, after some years, teachers say, that makes our teaching and our work much more meaningful. That is something where we can influence in which way we implement our teaching and working methods in schools. And teacher union came along and say, teachers must be professionals who develop their own profession. And curriculum planning is one important part of that. So that also changed, that teachers are started to more select what kind of materials they want to use. They have now very high freedom of that. And then also in which way they support through evaluation their students more formative way, so that they can use not only for examination but understanding how students learn. And then there came much more options also in service training, which was very much school-based, that there was more projects in schools and they work as community in schools. So that is the background when I am speaking now about that what is teachers' professional development. It can be centralized or decentralized, but based on, however, very important values like human dignity, sustainability, well-being. I think that the ethical principles of teaching is something what schools have to discuss what does that mean in this school and how we can support students' growth. So that is something what is then when I'm now speaking about teachers' professional development. This slide is from Finnish decentralized system. And you can see that there are these national core curriculum where is the government degrees and general national objectives and very much based on Education Act. There are values and there are also processed in wide interaction with different kind of organizations. What are those values and what strategies there should be in this national core curriculum? And then we have municipal, regional curriculum level. For example, city of Helsinki make their own regional curriculum, which is not so detailed, but gives what are the aims and needs in city Helsinki, which is totally different than some city in eastern Finland. And then schools with teachers, principals, parents, students, cultural organizations are invited to create school-based curriculum. And then that is something what is in the guideline for teaching and learning. So, when thinking about teachers' professional development, we have to see that it's not very easy, smooth process. It's very holistic process in which teachers' whole personality is involved. Teachers are different, and fortunately they are different. They have different kinds of personal capabilities, and every teacher is different. And when thinking reforms, there are a lot of restructuring from earlier concepts. When some reforms are planned, there are a lot of issues. What is my concept of learner or student? That is something what our teachers say. I had to change my concept of learner. What is the students? Earlier I thought that yes, my responsibility is to teach, but now I understand my responsibility is to be sure that my kids are learning. So the restructuring, also the colleagues, who they are, in which way we are working in community practice, and yes, that is very, very deep process. And sometimes teachers also think about that, oh, I didn't work anything valuable before because I have to change so much. But that's not true. You have done excellent work, but the life is changing and you need to change also your attitudes. Which means that teachers need support, mentoring, collegial support, and especially principal support. And they need also very practical opportunities, how they can try new ways, try new school-based projects where are very many demanding issues as uncertainties also what are the outcomes. So, but that is something should be led in school, principals to help them to make those kind of trials, which are not absolutely so successful in the first time, but mentoring, collegial help is important. And also we have to see that because teachers are different, they can have also different kinds of capabilities to bring to this collegial community of practice. There can be some people more capable and interested in digital issues, some are more art, and some are more different kinds of social community relationships. take them all as a resource for your own community. So now I want to go a little to this ecosystem back. So when there is some reform, and that is not only from Finland, that is from international perspective, how to put macro and meso level more interaction. In Finland, when we start curriculum change or reform, usually it takes 4 years before schools start to implement then the new curriculum, for example. First, it's time for analyze what is needed, and then 2 years for making school-based curriculum. Interaction should happen from the beginning when starting reform, and then keep that interaction throughout, because in meso level, in school level, it is big change, it's cultural change, and it means also that leaders, school principals' role are so important, and teacher representatives in those kind working groups what are in reform, that is very much needed. So that is something how to get macro and mid-level interaction more interconnected. There can be different ways. Workshops, communication platforms, but anyway, depending on the country, that is something it should be also give time, but keep going this interaction. And hear different voices, because if those different voices have not expressed and heard, it means that in mid-level nothing happens. People want to keep what they have had before forever. Then thinking what is then in this meso level, in institutional level. Also there, communication and sharing for a common vision is very important. And that is what I emphasize in beginning my lecture, that what are the values on which this school want to commit, how we are doing that in our community, and how we then share our experiences in school-based or regional-based seminars, workshops, webinars, joint discussion, collaborative actions. But the most important is that without some kind of understanding of importance of reforms, it's very difficult to people to come along. They must process that yes, that is something we are now trying to get, but why? Why that is needed? What does that mean? That is big restructuring process in our minds and attitudes. And in this issue, I think that how the school culture, the leadership culture is supporting teachers, making them then more community of practice, that is very, very important. So then when thinking, as I mentioned, that what is teachers' important role, it is coming from a learner, from the student perspective. And I think that when thinking teachers' work, learner is a focus in teachers' professional development. So when it is reform, what is the most important for students to understand that new knowledge? When you are changing your pedagogy, teachers have content knowledge, they have pedagogical knowledge, then this pedagogical knowledge, it's very important that understand what is students' learning process and what are their learning difficulties, how you or your special need teachers or parents can help kids to overcome these difficulties. So in that sense, it's also supporting those who have difficulties. But when we are doing that kind of work, I think that both teachers and both students need also opportunities to apply what they have learned. That is something, I think, that in human learning, that we can understand, yes, knowledge, but then how to apply that in very concrete situations. I think that that is something also what schools could be more and more now willing to give also for teachers, for students, that experiment together, share experiences. And if there is, for example, project-based learning, there both teachers and students learn together also how to apply that knowledge. I think that in many cases it's a question of co-learning and co-working. And then I think that there is a very important issue that teachers are all the time learning, and in a situation they have to learn because changes are all the time also coming. And this ecosystem means that there must be a lot of this kind of interaction, but also information flow. If you're thinking educational ecosystem and biological ecosystem, interconnectedness, different kinds of species are working together, not so intentionally what human beings can do, but they happens, interconnectedness. But in biological ecosystem, all the time there is a huge amount of information flow, coming and going, and that is also in human ecosystem, needed information, feedback, how to work together, that kind of actions are needed. And then also that in healthy ecosystem, biological ecosystem, there are huge amount of diversity, and that is also in educational ecosystem. Different voices are needed, but then there must be also to try to find consensus, what is our joint aim and in which way we can achieve that. So, ladies and gentlemen, I put these 3 pillars or areas what I think that it's very important when we are speaking about teachers' professional development. Important is that teachers are along in those reforms, preparing together with the macro level these reforms, making their own plans, how to implement, taking their own demands, local needs also in consideration, and then collaborative culture, joint vision and sharing, and then learner is a focus in teachers' professional development, and then that is the continuous process, learning all the time and in community, in collegial community. So I think that that is my message, and I think that that is also very, very, I could say, difficult message because it puts everybody in the process to learn, but it makes also teaching and teaching profession meaningful, and it gives also status for teachers and schools, what is really needed in society. So, ladies and gentlemen, thank you very much indeed. So, here is my little connection information, my email, and you are always open to make your remarks and questions also to me. Thank you so much. Certainly. Yeah, if there is any questions, remarks, please, I'm very available for them, and Patricia will help.
Yes, as you know, we've got a Q&A. Please be succinct, be concise in your questions. She has in simultaneous interpreting, so you can speak in either Spanish or Basque, whichever you prefer, and we will translate into English.
Hi, good morning. First of all, thank you very much.
She's speaking in English, straight to you.
It was really inspiring, and for me as a teacher and director or head manager that I am nowadays, I've been in Finland. I'm from vet education, so not children, and I've been watching your system. I really like the way they work in life school. Maybe you know, it's a very interesting one. But I think maybe as an expert you could help us trying to make a better educational system here. I think we are really professionals here, the teachers we are working here in the Basque Country. But I don't know if the way you work in Finland, that of course it's working much better than our system. How do you suggest that we could start working on? Because due to the economical system or values that you have in Finland, you are very low population, and of course I think that the society also gives a lot of importance, like for teachers. It's not the same here, so what do you think we could start from? Thank you.
Thank you for this question. Very important questions indeed. So first of all, I would say that no education system can't be transformed directly to any other countries. Finnish system can't be transmitted or transformed here directly. Every country has their own educational, historical, political roots, and that always influence so much. We had totally different situation. We had a long time being part of Sweden and then part of Russian, and finally when we got our independence, the main driving force was that we don't have so much anything environmental resources or anything other, but only what we have is our language and culture. And that gave very, very strong basis for our educational thinking. But when times went forward, then there was also this kind of, I could say, checking point when livelihood was changing. And why then that kind of reform was possible? I think that there was the huge amount of people who came from different kind of sector in society. It came from economic side. First they were against, but then they realized that without good education, economy can't flourish and we can't survive. So it's needed labor market, it needed industrial areas along, then it needed cultural and educational partners along, and then political parties along, and I think that is important that it is discussed and it is something what is then come from different sectors to make change in education. I think that it's not only that there is teachers can't do change alone. It's much more societal process. how that happens in different countries, that is totally different on the political system also, what that could be. But I think that impulses must come, and pushing drivers, which means that there must be discussion how the country will survive if they don't make changes. And education is one of those survival games, that how to be then in the future, not only at this moment.
Are there any other questions? We've got about 10 minutes.
Ha salido permanentemente el tema de los docentes.
Now, you've been talking about teachers a lot, but I wanted to talk about or ask you about other professionals as well who work and participate at schools in Finland. Apart from teachers, do you have social services? Do you have mental health services? I'd like to ask about that. Could you talk about that a little bit, please?
Yes. So teachers are certainly important, but teachers need also a different kind of help. And in every school there must be so-called student welfare group, and there is teachers, representatives, but there is also social worker. And there is school psychologist, and there are health care representative also, because many cases when students have difficulties, it's not only learning difficulties. Certainly in this welfare group is there also special need teachers, so that also these could be covered. But that is the way that there is multi-professional group. By saying that, it seems that students' difficulties, for example, mental health difficulties, are growing, or maybe we know more about these, and that put also very much pressure to healthcare system and how healthcare system and schools can work together, and there is shortage in healthcare system to get mental health issues professionals to work with the schools, but that is also something what is now in discussion. But then there is also, because we have that mixed ability groups, there are school assistants which are helping those who have disable problems, whether they are some moving or sense disabilities. So these personal school assistants are working also in normal classroom if there is those problems. So I think that teachers need help, but when I described this situation, that there are those assistants and different kinds of forums, but in reality, in same classroom, if there are a lot of different kinds of disabled students and different kinds of learning difficulties, it's very hard for teachers, and teachers now speak about that they need more that kind of help, because with their own capacity to take all these kind of difficulties and help students, it's however limited that they can, what teachers can do in those cases. So extra help is needed, and also relationship with parents is very important. It's not always smooth. There be very kind of tensions, but also trying to get also parents to work as cooperation when there are difficulties. If, for example, bullying, that's everywhere in the world, that is something what parents should be involved also. Thank you.
I'm not a teacher, I'm not a principal, and I'm not involved in school administration. I'm a parent. I think we have a lot to learn from Finland, not only when it comes to the education system, but also when it comes to the development of one of its main languages. Maybe many people here are not aware that Finland has two main official languages, Swedish and Finnish. So my question is, migration has been mentioned, so I'm wondering if migrants also go to Swedish-speaking areas, if at the end of the compulsory education, these students are equally fluent both in Swedish and Finnish. Thank you. Kiitos.
Yes, we have these two official languages, and then we have also small minority Sami language, which is also in our national languages. So, depending on the region, Swedish or Finnish is the main language, and if there are migration students, they learn that main media of instruction, and some kind of portion also the second language. So that it doesn't mean that they are fully language capable in both national languages, but everybody must learn also Swedish if they are in Finnish school, and also in Swedish school also Finnish. But it's I think it's not full language capability in that. But we have also now, when we have migration in Helsinki area, more than third population in school children are from other language background than Finnish or Swedish, which means that we try to also give mother tongue in their own languages, and that keeping them some basic that they could then understand through their own language, also our Finnish or Swedish as a second language. So that is now, but I think that the language issue among those immigrant students, that is serious issue, because if they don't have full capacity to use either Finnish or Swedish, they don't get, for example, so good access to higher education, which is we are now very much worried about.
Bueno, uste dut, oso garaiz gabiltzala.
Well, we're fairly early, but we have 1 minute left until it's time for coffee break. So if there are no more questions, if there is a question, it needs to be very, very short. Otherwise, we'll just break for coffee now. No more questions? Okay, well, thank you all very much indeed for your participation. Thank you very much. Hannele will be back here at 12 o'clock. And in the room just outside, we have coffee, we have juice, we have cakes and biscuits. Something for everyone, I hope. And we'll be back here at 12 o'clock for the round table debate. And here we'll be listening to voices of experts. So just before we go for coffee, I'd like to thank Hannele one more time. She's speaking in English.
Thank you.